Andy, can you give me an example of how a youth minister might walk into a space and make a theological turn as opposed to a theology turn?
Yeah, so the story that I always use, and I have been, I'm a Bonhoeffer lover, so much of my thought has always gone back to Bonhoeffer. And one of the reasons I always go back to Bonhoeffer, and I think why Bonhoeffer has captivated so many, is because the lived experience and the theological construction are so close together. I mean, the biography is so important to understanding Bonhoeffer, and so I think there's something really to be learned on how story, biography, narrative kind of fits within this. But my favorite Bonhoeffer story, one of my favorite Bonhoeffer stories, is the story that comes from a letter that we get, actually, that's discovered in 1999. It was a letter written in 1928, 27, 28-ish, when Bonhoeffer was in Barcelona, and it's about this 10-year-old boy. And this 10-year-old boy comes to Bonhoeffer's flat, and he's sad, and he's upset, and Bonhoeffer's just there for him. And there's a sense, in my own theological system, I've really stolen from Bonhoeffer this concept that runs all the way through Bonhoeffer's theology. He uses this German word, Stillvertretung, which is so romantic. You'll want to use it next Valentine's Day. So he uses this word everywhere in his theology, and it means something like the way I've translated it, which is, it's a decent translation, but it means something like play sharing. It's sometimes been translated as deputyship or vicarious representative action, which none of that preaches and is cumbersome and gross. Is gross almost as whispering in your lover's ear, baby, I want to be your Stellvertreter. So I've tried to rephrase this, and I think it's a fair translation, as play sharing. So this runs all through Bonhoeffer's theology, and what's fascinating about this letter is this 10-year-old boy comes to his flat to drop something off. It's not a moment really where he's thinking, oh, I'm going to do ministry now. This is the perfect time to do youth ministry. He's just living his life. But he's also very aware that the encounter of human personhood, especially with young people, becomes an incredible place where Jesus Christ is present, where Jesus Christ is found in the relationship between you and me, and especially when that relationship wears the marks of actually standing on your behalf, of actually ministering to you and allowing you to minister to me. And so this boy comes in and he's sad, and Dietrich just shares his place, feels no drive to somehow fix the boy, and the boy starts really sobbing, and no sense to get the boy to stop crying. He just really bears the boy's experience. And how I always often tell the story is that's it. That's the point. The point is to minister to the boy, to be there for the boy, to offer his presence is really a sacrament of God's presence here. But in the midst of that moment, and this is what I think where I'm really trying to push the theological, in the midst of that shared moment of Stellvertretung, of play sharing, the big theological question comes. And it becomes that because it's not just at kind of the head intellectual level, but it becomes this shared, embodied experience of really wrestling with one's own humanity, of life itself, of limitation, of death, of loss. And we need a minister in those experiences. And so here is Bonhoeffer, and this boy is crying, and he's just with them. And out of that shared experience comes an incredibly profound theological question, which the boy wants to know, now that his dog has died, and he's crying because his dog is dead, what's God going to do about this? Where is God in the midst of this? And it sends this very arrogant theologian. I mean, if you know Bonhoeffer's story, you know that he always thought very highly of himself. I mean, as he had his own kind of spiritual awakening after his time in New York City in 1930-31, the big awakening to him that he always had to work on and pray about was his own arrogance. And so he's opened up to this deep experience of this boy's question about his dead dog, and he feels small, but yet pulled into something holy and significant. And I think that's what I mean by the theological, the question that's born out of this shared experience of being ministered to, of ministering to another, that leads to, well, where is God in the midst of this? Or I've had this experience, how do I make sense of it? That I think that's where the most significant and important theological work is done.